Good morning. This is John from the Springs Mennonite Church. I'm happy to be with you today. I hope you're having a good day and you're having a really good week. I really do. Now, I said I was going to take this week and talk about a theme of what do we do based on Ephesians, and I'd like to do that again today. From the 5th chapter, we find these words beginning with verse 1. Therefore, and everything you do, imitate God. Well, let me stop there a second. You can't put it any simpler than that. What do I say in this situation? Well, what would God say? How do I respond to this person? Well, how would God respond? How do I react to someone who does such and such? Well, what would God do? See, all we have to do is imitate God. Now, that doesn't mean we are God. Don't get that carried away with it. But just do what God would do. You know, the word imitate means to copy, to replicate, to follow in the example of, to do it like someone else, to make it look the same. So many, many times, we are to be God's presence in a situation. We have a sign on our church out here. Our lives speak louder than our words. And that's true. Of course, our words speak pretty loud too, so it's not to say that they're not important. But what's important is how do we embody the teachings of Jesus? How do we demonstrate those to those around us? Now, it goes on here to say, to do this, imitate God because you are his dear children. Everybody was created by God uniquely and for a purpose. Even those who aren't walking with God. And there are some who will never, ever in their lifetime walk with God. But that doesn't mean they were a mistake. So the issue is, okay, what were you made for? Why were you created? What is your purpose in life? I used to ask my students when I was teaching college, what do you want to do with your life? And I got a lot of, well, I want to do this, or maybe I want to do this, or I think I'd like to do this, or I don't really know. And I would say to them, that's all right. You don't have to figure it out right now. Because I haven't figured it out either, and I'm a lot older than you are. But if you look at my life, there's still a consistency from the start to to right now. I want to say the end, but hadn't ended yet. At least I don't think so. There's been a consistency of wanting to do what God wants me to do. And I'd like to believe that I've succeeded, at least in some of that, because I'm God's child. And so are you. We are the highest created order. That makes us special. Doesn't make us better than, but makes us special. And because of that specialness, God expects more from us. So what do? Imitate God. Do what God wants. Every time you want to know, what do I say? What would God say? Every time you want to ask, well, how should I react to this? Well, do what God would do. And I know that we get hurt and we get disappointed. And we have feelings of anger and resentment. God knows that too. And if at that moment we don't act like God, at least shortly afterwards we'll realize we could have done better. And maybe the next time we will. The goal is not to be perfect. The goal is to get better at it. So it goes on to say here, live a life filled with love, following the example of Jesus. A life filled with love. Wow, that's a toughie. But it's a good thing, don't you think? Isn't it better to be loving than to be cutting someone down? Isn't it better to say something good about someone than to point out their faults? I know in our current environment, our social environment, there's a lot of anger. There are a lot of stuff being said that's really not helpful. It's really not uplifting. It's not, as the Bible would say, edifying. But yet, God wants us to be that way. I really don't know how to say it more directly. Live a life of love. How do you know if you're living a life of love? Well, ask yourself, if I were receiving what I am saying, would that help me? Would that make me feel good? Use yourself as the example. If I were receiving on the receiving end of the way I'm acting right now, would I be thankful? Would I be grateful? Would I be excited? If the answer is no, then it's a pretty good chance you're not acting in love. Now, I know a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people act in other ways. A lot of people act very unloving, and they do it their whole lives. But just because there is someone out there doesn't mean you should be one of them. You see, God wants better for you and for me. He wants us to be examples of what He's trying to do in the world. And a lot of people try to be Old Testament, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But that's not the example of Jesus. And this says to follow the example of Jesus. So if you come up to the point where you say, I don't know what to do, it's real simple. Imitate God. If you're disappointed, if you're scared, if you're hurting, if you're embarrassed, whatever it is, do what God would do. And in doing so, you are assured of doing the right thing. Well, you think about that. I appreciate you sharing some of your time. If you have a prayer concern or a need, let us know. We'll do everything we can, as fast as we can, to try to help meet your need. Well, thanks for listening. Hope you have a wonderful day. I'll talk to you again.